What's up, everybody? Maddox here. Welcome back to the Poke Historian. This is the show where we talk about Pokemon cards, we talk about life, we talk about the intersection of them together, how they relate and how they don't. And today, I want to specifically talk about the dark psychology of Pokemon cards and how that also spills over into many different facets of our lives. All right? So, let me give you a very good non Pokemon card example of this dark psychology I'm talking about, okay? So in the town that I live in, we have a downtown area where there's a whole bunch of bars where you can kind of bop around from bar to bar, or at least you used to be able to. And it was cool because you could just go into a bar, have a drink, dance around, leave, go to the next bar, have a drink, throw some darts, leave, go to the next one, next bar, watch the band play, yada, yada, yada. And you could just rinse and repeat, and your whole night could be like a pilgrimage, right? Like going to all these different bars, and it was super fun, it was super cool, and you got to have a lot of different experiences in one night. However, during COVID, specifically towards the tail end of it, we had one guy hop in, and he decided he was going to buy up most of these bars and reno them and completely change how they work. And his whole strategy was, well, I'm not going to just let people bippity bop around from bar to bar anymore. From here on out, I'm going to be charging cover, and there's going to be lines, like you're going to be waiting to get in. And the reason he did this is he figured, well, if I start charging cover, it's going to make my place look more exclusive and more desirable. And if there's lines outside, people are going to think it's really good and it's a place you really want to get in. And then more people are going to want to get in line. And then before you know it, like I'm getting a whole bunch of money because my place now looks super desirable because I've implemented this new strategy. And to his credit, it's worked. It's definitely worked. The lines at some of these bars now to get in, it'll take you 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes just to get in the bar. And people are in there and they're spending money, and the guy's making money hand over fist. Thing that sucks though is if you're a consumer, now if you want to go anywhere, you got to wait in line, you got to pay more for things that used to just be, well, I guess in the context of not paying cover, you didn't have to pay at all, right? And that kind of sucks. And now like you can't really jump around from bar to bar anymore. I mean, you got to really kind of be more strategic about where you're going. And then if you want to leave, like you better really give it a lot of cost benefit analysis all the while you're drunk trying to figure this out. Because if you leave, you're going to be waiting maybe another hour just to be able to get in your next spot. And for the consumer, that just kind of stinks, especially like when the whole system was a lot more consumer friendly before. But that's just been kind of a change we've seen in general throughout life, at least here in the United States, is a lot of consumer friendly policies and ideas have just gone out the window, and a lot of like psychology that's darker that these businesses know that they can use to kind of get more profit and more money, they've really started implementing it, where as opposed to like say before COVID, like 2015, I think we were all always aware of some of the dark psychology, but like the businesses weren't as apt to use it back then. And I think the more I'm just kind of talking through this in my head, I think the reason a lot of this came about was like during COVID, since businesses were hit so hard and a lot of them weren't doing that well, they started kind of like using darker human psychological tactics to get people to buy their stuff because they had to recoup all the money they were losing from being shut down or not being able to get products and stuff. So like they used these tactics to like get money during the time when they weren't doing so well. And then they just kept using them because they got comfortable doing it. And now here we are several years removed from COVID, but we're still seeing a lot of the same kind of like darker FOMO-esque psychological tactics involved to get people to buy. Like for example, even if you go to a grocery store right now, there will be like certain things you might not be able to get, which of course before COVID were readily available. There'd just be random things that are just like out of stock, or, oh, sorry, that's not in supply right now. And it drives up demand. And y'all know where I'm going with this is, of course, we're seeing this with Pokemon cards too. I mean, the first thing you think about is like the lines like at Target and Walmart to get in when there's a supply drop of Pokemon cards. And you got 30, 40, 50, 60 people waiting just to get a little mini tin or like a few booster packs. And when people see people waiting in line to get this stuff, they think it's desirable, and then more people want to get in line. I also think of like the Pokemon Center queues, right? I mean, the whole idea of the Pokemon Center queues, I guess, is to keep the website from crashing. However, you can't tell me there's not a psychological element that they've implemented where they make you wait in that queue for like 3 to 4 hours just to get like their newest product. And you can't tell me that doesn't like stimulate demand and FOMO and like get people even more hyped. And when I think of the most recent release we had, where we had Pitch Black and like the queue crashed and all that stuff, I mean, I think that's the perfect example because it seems like the longer they've had this queue going, the more people want to jump in the queue. And like eventually we've gotten to the point now where the queue is crashing and the whole website's not even working with the queue. So there's something about waiting in line and having that scarcity that just drives us as humans like nuts. It's just something like in our reptilian brains. It's like when we can't have something, we just feel this desire to go out and like get it more and more. And we really have to try and fight against it as best we can, but it's very hard. And some people are just not as good as that as other people are. Another example of this too, we know that the Pokemon company actually printed less cards in the previous year than they did the years before, even though we had more demand. So again, like this psychological manipulation tactic of creating artificial scarcity, Pokemon knows what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. Distributors know what they're doing. Your local card shops know what they're doing. They're taking advantage of a lot of our animalistic, our reptilian brains and just making it so like we want to get this stuff where under normal circumstances, we might not really give a shit. And like I said, it's just like a lesson where we need to kind of just try and be very kind of cognitive and mindful of this. And just remember that just because something looks desirable doesn't mean it actually is. Just because something looks like other people want it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good product. And in fact, like a lot of times, something that's being overlooked and something that people don't want, like, kind of like a little bit of a diamond in the rough situation, might be what you really want to go after. And of course, the first thing I think about that right now is like, well, Pokemon cards are so oversaturated with popularity and hype. Maybe you want to check out other TCGs and other things you want to collect and find something where things are a little bit more calm. Yeah, I get it. Maybe people don't want that stuff right now, but doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. And you might have yourself a better time going after the thing that people actually aren't going off about and being crazy about. And just try and step away from this dark psychology that a lot of businesses have gotten very comfortable with using against us to buy their products. So anyways, those are just ruminations of the Poke Historian. Long story short, I think before COVID, a lot of these dark psychological tactics to get us to buy things weren't as used by businesses because they weren't as needed. Then COVID came around, a lot of businesses started struggling, so they kind of like shifted some of their tactics to be a little bit more sleazy, a little bit darker, to kind of try and make up for some of those lost profits that they missed out on because of the whole pandemic situation. And then we just got to a point after that where they got so comfortable using these tactics and people just became so okay with it that a lot of these tactics are still being used today, even though COVID was still years away. And the Pokemon card company and all the companies attached to it that work with it that are part of this Pokemon card machine, they're all doing the same thing, y'all. It's all part of a big machine that, at least to some level, takes advantage of us. And maybe that's not the most positive thing to let y'all know about, but it's just something we should be aware about. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy the hobby, doesn't mean you shouldn't collect the cards, doesn't mean you shouldn't be involved, but it's just something we should all be aware of. Anyways, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Am I crazy or am I onto something? Hit the notification bell if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.